Hello, all you amazing women, and welcome to How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess. With me, Amanda Ryder, nutritionist and author. Now, I call this podcast How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess because, let's face it, so many of us don't feel like shining in midlife. We can be grappling with physical and psychological symptoms, which can lead to a real loss of confidence, and it can feel like you're really losing your identity. However, I believe it's possible for us all to feel good at this time of our lives. So each week, I'm going to be sharing with you my best nutrition and lifestyle advice, as well as interviewing expert speakers. And week by week, together, we will build upon a foundation of healthy, sustainable habits that will really benefit us and make all the difference to how we feel. So stay tuned, because this is your recipe for thriving at midlife and bringing out your inner goddess. Hello, and welcome to How to Feel Like a Midlife Goddess, episode 6. And today I've got the pleasure of hosting Emma Ellice Flint. Now, Emma is a fellow degree qualified nutritionist, nutritional therapist. She's also an experienced chef, author, and presenter. What I love about Emma is her, she's very much evidence-based, and her advice uses the latest science and research to inform her work. So when you hear from Emma, you know you can trust what she says. Now, I got to know Emma because I wrote to Dr. Louise Newson in lockdown offering my services as a nutritionist. And Louise put me in touch with Emma, and we've been sort of chatting ever since. And for those of you on the podcast, whether you're in the UK or the US, if you haven't heard of Dr. Louise Newson, she's a medical doctor, and she's been helping and empowering midlife menopausal women the length and the breadth of the country for quite a few years now, hasn't she? And she's such an ambassador for women's health and helping us understand our hormones and our rights and our bodies, and just our right to access help and HRT. So if any of you want more information on that, I would urge you to go and have a look on her website, which is Balance. Is it just Balance now, Emma, or?
It's Balance Menopause.
Balance Menopause, yeah, lots of information there. But anyway, I met the brilliant Emma, who is incredibly knowledgeable. And today I'm hoping to tap into your enthusiasm for eating healthily. And, hopefully we can all tap into your wisdom when it comes to health and well-being and what it is to be, a midlife woman. So welcome to the podcast, Emma.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And I love your podcast. Straight off, I couldn't believe how you nailed it, really, right from the first episode.
Oh, thank you.
Brilliant. So thank you for that as well.
I'm so nervous when I do these podcasts, and I have my questions, and it's kind of getting easier now. But when I finish doing the podcast, I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted, because you're just I'm thinking about as any podcaster does, but thinking about, is this relevant to the audience? And am I asking the right questions? Is the person talking too much or not enough? Just having that inner narrative. But I'm grateful for you saying that, and I'm glad that you like it.
No worries.
Yeah. But anyway, today I was really hoping, Emma, that we could sort of just discuss the importance of gut health, because I know that's a really big area for you, and you've done a lot of research there. The estrobolome, and I know that's another one of your sort of favorite topics, and how women can get their own estrobolome in order, and we'll talk a little bit about what it is and what it does and how it might help you. And I also thought, I was looking at your books last night, and Emma's got 4 books, I think, on your website, ebooks, and I think do you have an actual book that people can buy now?
I do actually have an actual book.
Okay,
which is called the Happy Hormone Cookbook.
Okay.
The problem is it keeps going out of print. So let me just quickly fill in with your audience.
Yes, please.
I originally was a chef. And so I have an immense passion for food anyway, from a cooking perspective. And then in kind of early midlife, I really was trying to follow like kind of a healthy way of living. I was a little bit IBS-y anyway. And I decided, I can't be a chef all my life.
No. Emma, when was this? How long ago are we talking? Because
this was in my late 30s,
aren't you?
Were
you in Australia when you became a chef?
And I was a chef in Sydney, Australia.
Okay.
most of my adult life.
Oh, wow.
And then in my late 30s, I thought, well, I can't really do this forever. And I wanted to follow my passion, which was health.
Yeah.
So I completely stopped and did a nutrition
And
degree
why could you not do it forever? Is it very sort of
because it's so physical and it's very
environmental?
stressful and it's
Yeah.
very tiring and
Okay.
you stand up all day. And I
Yeah.
was watching some of my chef mentors and who were dropping out, and they were like 10 years ahead of me, 15 years ahead of me. And I thought, oh no, I don't, and they were burnt out or worn out or couldn't
Gosh.
do it
Yeah.
anymore. I
Yeah.
thought, no, let's be proactive about it. So I
Yeah.
did my nutrition degree and literally have not looked back.
Brilliant.
So in Australia, it's such an incredibly fabulous food scene, but also from a health perspective, they're bang on, so like
Yeah.
it's just this wonderful mix of healthy food and consideration about your health at whatever age. And so I worked in clinic with a gynecologist and an acupuncturist and a naturopath in this one clinic in Sydney,
Yeah.
and it was brilliant. Like, oh, and a psychologist or a psychotherapist. So
Yeah.
you can imagine that our meetings, our clinic meetings, for how dynamic and fabulous they were. Yeah, so that's my background. I came to the UK. I was born in the UK, but I came back to live in the UK 5 years ago. You're right. I started working at Dr. Louise Newson's clinic for the last 4 years. I swapped to my own clinic last year, and that's been fabulous. So deep dive into
Yeah.
perimenopause,
Yeah.
menopause. And
Uh-huh.
that's the area I focus on now because there is so much you can do through food to help a woman in that stage. So that's it. Passion doesn't even start. Yeah, it doesn't even cover it. It's just
You
like,
always seem to have so much enthusiasm. I didn't mention that Emma, and I will leave all the links in the show notes, but she has, you have quite a following now, don't you, on Instagram? And your Instagram posts are really inspirational, as is your website. And, again, I will leave these links, but Emma has an amazing array of recipes on your website and they all look absolutely beautiful, and every time I look, oh, I'm gonna make this and I'm gonna make that, I just feel, yeah, so you put a lot of energy into presenting,
absolutely,
don't you? Presenting
absolutely,
beautiful work.
absolutely. I try and have actually a lot of free content. So
Yeah.
you know how it goes with our work. So we're both clinical. I call myself a clinical nutritionist because that was what my qualification in Australia gave me, and that was the terminology they use. Here it's the nutritional therapist.
Yes.
So it's actually both are the same thing.
Yeah.
And you're a member of a professional body, and it's wonderful. So we both do clinic, and you're one-to-one with people, and you can really deep dive into their health and help them out. That's fantastic, but that's quite expensive. And then I have these degrees, then people can go down. I do online talks, I do face-to-face in-person talks, I give cooking demonstrations sometimes in person or online. I do I offer private, I do actually quite a lot of private business talks and to corporations and things like that. And I love doing those. I do sometimes as a guest speaker at one-day retreats. I do my own retreats. These are
Yeah.
all just kind of like different
Yeah.
posts. And
Sounds
then I
like
also
super busy,
personally
Emma,
offer,
and very thinly spread, but
yes.
you seem to
Well,
do it
I
and
just
seem
feel
to have the
like it's
energy
very
for it.
important that everyone gets the information at
Yeah.
whatever price point they can afford. So then my ebooks, they are very reasonably priced. They
Yeah.
dive fairly narrowly into different topics.
Uh-huh.
I'm just currently writing like a perimenopause short kind of e-cookbook at the moment. Not too big. I don't want people to be
Yeah, it can be
overwhelmed.
overwhelming sometimes, can't it? There's so much information out there that
Yeah,
yeah, you just sometimes just want the facts, don't you? Just the
yeah,
headlines and yeah. And that's what I love about your recipes. They're all quite simple and easy to follow
yes.
and just lovely, healthy, nutritious, fresh
Yeah,
foods.
exactly that.
Yeah,
Exactly that. And we will need to pull back and look at the basics, which you'd be well aware of, but many listeners may not be. And it does come down to what do you eat? How do you exercise? Or how often? And how do you sleep? The kind
mm,
of those are the
yeah,
cornerstones.
yeah,
Nail those for ourselves, very individual. Then that is fantastic. It will really help our perimenopause symptoms. It will help our aging well. It will help our mood and our mind. It's just all these things that we want. We'll have the energy to get through our day. And this is it. And sure, there may be some supplements thrown in, especially midlife onwards. I feel supplements are quite important. But I think those three things, they're cornerstones. And you kind of, it's like a stool which has, those three-legged stools. Actually, my partner, who's a psychotherapist, would say it's a four-legged stool or even a five-legged stool. And I go into those other two legs in a sec.
Great.
But, that food nutrition one, the sleep quality, the exercise, he would say there's your connection, your intimacy with people, and kind of like how much you're in a community and that sort of thing. So as being cornerstones to living well. And it goes back to the blue zones, which I know you're very passionate about, and you've talked about that on a number, I think, of your podcasts. Those blue zones, all those legs of that chair or that stool, and without one of the legs, it's kind of like a bit wobbly. And I concentrate on the food side because that's where I have the most knowledge. And I really try and inspire people to eat well. And there are some points to that eating well that really covers everybody in the nuances of an individual. Sure, there are some foods that might irritate them, perhaps if they have IBS or perhaps if they have histamine intolerance, but there's some cornerstones. So I might go into
that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. Now, I said at the beginning that we were going to talk a little bit about gut health because I know you've got a lot of knowledge and you've done a lot of research in that area. And I just think it's, for a lot of women, they, things do shift, don't they, in midlife? Whether you take HRT or whether you choose not to, but you start trying to help yourself. And, like you, I'm sure I see a lot of women in clinic that have gut issues and they've just suddenly come on like a bit IBS-y, as you suffered with yourself, maybe a bit of constipation, a bit of pain, cramping, just basically feeling that their gut isn't quite as robust as it once was. Can you just tell us a little bit about, how we can look after our guts, the headlines, the things that we can use on a sort of daily, weekly basis, and just get us thinking about, how we can avoid gut issues as we go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I'd add bloating, definitely gut bloating.
Oh God, bloating, gas, all of that,
Yeah, no, that's it. So yeah, I think there are some simple things to do. And first of all, I wouldn't say to anybody, make these changes all at once. You just make one of the changes and then layer it up, do it gradually. I think that's really important. And so I think that a person wants to look at their eating, both the timing of their eating and then also what literally is on that plate or in that bowl, that sort of thing. And when we look at the food that someone's eating, it's quite important to be plant focused with their eating. It doesn't mean you can't have meat or seafood or dairy. They're fine. It just depends how much you're eating. It's just have a think about being plant focused. And so what does that mean? It means make the majority of what you're eating be plant food. Now, within that, there's masses of choice. And this is based on research because we know when we look at which populations or which type of diets are the best for our health, for our gut health, for literally reducing menopause symptoms, for longevity, for lowering cholesterol, lowering blood pressure, etc. Those ones are best for the mind and our mood. It's the Mediterranean style diet. Now, that doesn't mean we have to live on the Mediterranean at all, but it seems consistently. And some also traditional diets, say in Japan and places like that, or in the Nordic countries, seem to reflect also this kind of Mediterranean diet principles, which is very much plant focused. So we're talking about fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and legumes, pulses, beans. We're talking about herbs and spices, and we're talking about whole grains. So grains do come into it, but in more of a whole form. And so that's what we're talking about really with sort of plant-based eating.
How do you feel about bread, Emma? Like gluten?
How do I feel about bread? I think it's a tricky one because it's bread, because shop-bought bread tends to now have lots of additives in it. It's proven, as in risen, very fast with accelerators. and it doesn't give time for that, literally that wheat, to be pre-digested by the fermentation process, whereas a long fermented sourdough gradually helps to pre-digest the wheat. So people find, especially fun enough in midlife and onwards, that they can tolerate bread less unless it's a long fermented sourdough. So this is outside of a brief of anything to do with celiac disease or gluten intolerance even. This is just how well that bread has been risen or proven or allowed to ferment. And so I generally think bread really goes into the processed food category. The ultra, perhaps, where does it sit? Is it ultra processed food? Is it processed food? I don't know. But most breads can actually exacerbate symptoms.
Yeah,
It's not
like
that there's
sort of
anything, yeah.
your
Do you find that?
supermarket loaves. I mean, you look at the ingredients, and it's anywhere from sort of 10 to 20 different ingredients, including emulsifiers and chemicals you never heard of, and yeah, these enzymes that, you know, like I said, bring on the proofing, and the whole thing's much faster, isn't it? Whereas a properly made sourdough bread can take sort of 18 to 24 hours, and the gluten in the bread becomes water soluble, so therefore it's not so irritating to the gut. And
That's
again,
correct.
it's about, I've just done a podcast, haven't published it yet, but I'm going to publish it today. But just on my experience of the Japanese diet, and
Yeah.
interestingly, they don't eat a lot of bread,
No,
you know,
they
and they
don't.
eat a lot of white rice. And
They
you know,
do.
we all say, well, you know, try and go for beans or brown rice or, you know, like whole grains. But they eat white rice with breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Yet they're so slim and they're so healthy, and they're one of the longest lived nations on the planet. And I've just sort of concluded that the rice is just incredibly unprocessed.
Yes, exactly.
And
Absolutely.
they
Just
don't eat it in
plain.
large quantities. They tend to eat it at the end of a meal. And I just think, obviously, in those ratios, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean weight gain for them or blood sugar spikes, because they're eating it with a largely plant-based diet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they often even
Yeah,
start, don't they,
life.
with some vegetables and some pickles and things like that.
Yes, all of that.
Or
Yeah.
even some sort of legume or something as well in there.
Yes, yeah.
Tofu's in there. And yes,
Fibers.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah,
then the rice is a sort of slightly a filler perhaps at the end or that
yeah.
sort of, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know if you find this, but sometimes, you know, when I'm sitting with a client one on one, and you know, you never want to be judgy with someone's diet. I mean, we all, you know, we all eat, we've been eating the way we've been eating for, you know, decades kind of thing. But sometimes I'll just point out to who I'm sitting with that, you know, they're having toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, and then pasta in the evening for dinner. And it's a lot of wheat for the body to sort of, yeah, process, especially if it's
Massive.
already been, you know, processed
Yeah.
itself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we come back to, say, the Mediterranean diet. When we talk about grains are definitely part of it. Well, we're talking about quinoa, amaranth, millet. We're talking about rice. We're talking about, sure, maybe some wheat, some barley, some rye, but also some oats. So that we're talking about quite a big
Yeah.
mixture
Yeah.
here of different grains
Yeah.
and not necessarily a large quantity. It's kind it just forms, it does come into it, it forms part of it.
Yes.
There's a whole mixture of them, which are quite common. And so, for example, you go to, let's take pasta, for example. Well, pasta can be made with wheat, but it can be made with chickpeas. It can be
Mm.
made with
Yeah.
buckwheat, which is
Yeah.
actually a gluten-free grain,
Yeah.
and it can be made with lentils.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, there's so many variations within pasta, and pasta can be a lovely, simple part of a high vegetable dish. You can have loads of vegetables with the pasta and it can be okay. But what is that pasta made from? And can you improve on it, like a chickpea one or a buckwheat one or a
Yeah.
lentil one? And
Yeah.
then it's higher in protein and
Uh,
it's lower in its kind of like simple carbohydrates. So it's less likely to produce an insulin spike. And we know insulin spikes or simple carbohydrates simply end up as body fat, as in belly fat.
mhm.
So that's it. And we also now know the actual part of going into menopause, irrespective of everything else outside of what we're doing, the process of menopause in our body means that we are less insulin sensitive. And they don't even know quite why that happens. Yes, sure, it must be connected with hormone balance, but it's not that simple. It comes to things like the gut health and how we now know that our gut, like you mentioned just a while back, becomes quite disrupted in the menopause. Our gut microbiome, that is in the beneficial microbes that live in our gut, are really upset, as we are, when we go into menopause. They love estrogen. They love all our hormones, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, and that gets out of balance. And so they can become out of balance. And so we have to rebalance them by nourishing them with a Mediterranean style diet, with a plant focused diet. But you do it, there's changes a little bit, like little bit by little bit. You know, if someone opened a tin of chickpeas and ate, you know, half the tin or a whole tin and they're not used to it, boy, they're going to have gut bloating,
Yeah,
gut
they're going to have some
I
serious
don't know what the heck
bloating.
their poo's going to do, but it'll either become
Yeah,
very loose or very constipated. So you
yeah,
don't do that. You get maybe a can of or tin of lentils,
yeah,
and you have just a little bit, like a tablespoon, and you do that repeatedly, and you gradually move into that legumes sort of area a little bit more, and that's great. That's great. I often have a big fry pan, and I chop up any old vegetables, literally in kind of bite-sized pieces.
you are brilliant at getting so many
Yeah,
different
extra
vegetables
virgin olive oil
in
in that
one pan.
pan.
Yeah,
I fry it off
uh,
slowly. I put a lid on the pan so it half steams, half gently fries.
perfect.
I might open a can of lentils. I might toss in some lentils. I might add
Yeah,
in some fried herbs or
yeah,
fresh herbs. I might layer it up by crumbling in some firm tofu, which is pre-cooked from the packet.
yeah,
Brilliant protein source. I might add some nuts and seeds for crunch and extra protein. And that is my all-time favorite weekday evening meal. And it takes me maybe 15 minutes to start to finish, especially if it's courgettes and onions and garlic and simple things and maybe some mushrooms, maybe some chopped up rainbow chard, you know, just those sorts of easy vegetables to
yeah,
cook. Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah,
And all those,
delicious.
that amazing array of vegetables and fiber is really beneficial in helping the gut, isn't it? And
Yeah, yeah,
feeding beneficial
yeah.
bacteria and hopefully encouraging them to grow and keeping the bad guys sort of, at bay.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
look, nourishing them. And the thing is, what you're doing is you're nourishing you're right, that the microbiota that you want,
yeah,
and that therefore reduces down the ones you don't, because the others thrive and kind of push out of the way. It's
yes,
not that
yeah.
you're killing the bad ones.
No,
It's
they're
just
just,
about there's
yeah.
only just so much room. So if you imagine the gastrointestinal tract, especially the large intestine, it's got that kind of slimy, purposely slimy, goopy, soupy, like marshland on
Yeah.
the edge of the gastrointestinal tract. And that's where they all kind of reside.
Mm.
Great. And you want that, and you want to nourish that, and you nourish it through plant food.
Yeah,
And you give them the food that they want. Also, there's lovely soluble fiber in that plant food, which also is a little bit slimy and goopy, which is great. Your gut loves it. You
yeah,
want it to
yeah,
be a little bit slippery in there.
yes.
And
And
that's
smooth
terrific.
and calm.
And yeah, absolutely. It's a lovely environment. And they allow the movement of nutrients through and that sort of thing. And they help with that whole nutrient absorption and the happiness, so to speak, that
Yeah.
goes. And it's a gradual thing. Now, so I used to have, before I started my degree, I guinea pigged on myself during my degree first.
Is that why
But
you did the degree? Because you said you were a bit IBS-y. Did that kind of,
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
I fluctuate between loose bowel movements and constipation and
yeah,
bloating.
quite
And
common.
for once I had, like, for a whole 4 weeks, I had loose bowel movements daily, and I thought, what the heck's going on here? So I did adjust things. At first I took out gluten. I'm okay a little bit with gluten occasionally, but it suits me better not to have it. I just gradually moved over to a more of a plant-focused diet, but it was very gradual. I took some supplements. I just, it was remarkable. I used to have bloating every night. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
after about 3 months, I didn't. And I sort of thought one day, I thought, oh my God, I've had a flat tummy now for over a week. This is great. This is, and just normal bowel movements. Normal can vary, anywhere between 3 times a day to once every 3 days is what the gastroenterologists think of as normal. Um, and it's just where you feel like it's happening when you want it to, and it's all okay, is kind of normal. Yeah.
And what did you do then, Emma, to help yourself to stop the sort of the issues with your gut?
So what I did was I did start eating more vegetables. I really thought I was doing well, but I did have a very typical kind of healthy-ish Western style diet.
Uh-huh.
I was eating a lot of meat, and I would have, a couple of vegetables like broccoli and carrots on my plate, maybe some potatoes or pasta or rice or something like that. And I was having a sandwich for lunch, and I was having some type of cereal, healthy, I thought it was, but a
Mm.
cereal for breakfast, that sort of kind of classic thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I was not having yogurt very often, no other fermented food. So I just gradually upped my vegetables, took out not all my carbs, but gradually made it a little bit quinoa or brown rice, or brought in some lentils, just sort of swapped it around. Didn't really have any gluten containing grains for a while.
Right.
And I seem to be okay with fermented dairy as opposed to non-fermented dairy. So I introduced yogurt every day, natural and, unsweetened. At the time, there wasn't really particularly kefir around, although someone then gave me some grains and I started growing it. That was great. Yeah, so I went from there, and it was fairly gradual, the change, and it just helped. It just
Yeah.
helped. I felt better. I had more energy. I jumped out of bed. I could get through the day. My skin was fabulous. My hair got better. I had less aches and pains. And this was even before perimenopause. So, and I flew through perimenopause, I'm sorry to say. It was
No,
really good.
you'd done your homework and you'd laid the
Because I was
foundation.
eating so well, and I had
Yeah.
lots of phytoestrogen rich foods as well. I ate lots of chickpeas. I ate lots of tofu.
Uh-huh.
I had often soy milk in the day. I had lots of herbs and spices, which of course were rich in phytoestrogens as well. And I just had them naturally anyway, because I enjoyed them.
Yeah.
Lots of
Yeah.
legumes, rich in phytoestrogen, lots of nuts and seeds. And I really began to relish that way of eating and enjoy it and look forward to it, and
Yeah.
felt a little bit unwell when I didn't eat that way, which was the opposite. It was great. It
So
was
you went
fantastic.
for a really nutrient-rich, plant-based diet. That was kind of your swap. What
Yeah.
would you say to a woman who's listening now and is suffering with gut issues like bloating and, maybe constipation, diarrhea sort of intermittently? What would the sort of headline advice would you give her?
So I would suggest she increases up her vegetables.
Okay.
And I would suggest she examines, well, is she overeating fruit or undereating fruit? The recommendation is generally a couple of portions of fruit a day, but I'm a huge fan of dark berries. And I always think, if possible, fresh or frozen is good, that someone tries to have those every day. Um, and then another perhaps piece of fruit at some other point, but that's not even essential. It's the vegetables. So you have definitely vegetables with lunch and vegetables with dinner. But it's very easy. On my website, I've got a really easy peasy coleslaw, but a nourishing one. So it's finely grated or shredded cabbage. It's grated carrot. It's that lovely basic. And I add a big handful of chopped up fresh like parsley in it. And
Uh-huh.
that's the basis. And a really simple dressing, extra virgin olive oil, either live apple cider vinegar or lemon juice. And then you can layer that up. If you've got any cooked leftover vegetables, you toss that in, or maybe you cook up some broccoli or not. But you make that up. It's dead easy. You can make it up in a large quantity and dress it each day. You could open a can of some sort of legume bean, something, lentils, chickpeas, white beans. If you want to add a little bit to that coleslaw, you
Mm.
could crumble in some firm tofu, add some nuts and seeds for crunch. Or if you've got leftover, or if you eat seafood, you can open a can of like sardines or herrings, or some wild caught salmon that still has bones in it. Great protein source. If you eat fermented dairy, you could absolutely grate over a little bit of like Parmesan or Manchego or something
Sounds
like
so
that.
yummy.
Yeah, it delicious.
Sounds
And
really
you
good.
layer it up. You just layer it up, but
Yeah.
it's so fast. It's
Yeah.
so nourishing. It's so
Yeah.
fast. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
And it's just
You've
getting
added in there.
the habit of preparing vegetables and not going to the fridge and expecting to take something out and eat it immediately. It's that, you do have to do a bit of chopping and just making that part of your life rather than it's a chore. It's something that I do occasionally. It needs to be at most meals.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you might have a pot of sauerkraut in the fridge, and you just put a tablespoon and toss that through that salad, and my God, you just bam, fermented foods. fantastic for your
And
gut.
you've got a vast knowledge on fermented foods as well, isn't it? I know
Yeah.
I've done one of Emma's courses, and if you get a chance, have a look on her website, which is just, if you look up Emma's Nutrition, and I will leave that in the show notes. But she does this fantastic, fermented food course where you learn to make sauerkraut, kefir, kombucha. It's amazing. But just tell us what we're getting when we eat something like, because most people can access, a jar of sauerkraut. They can buy it at their local delicacy, or delicatessen rather. And I know, just want to say, if you are buying some sauerkraut either in the supermarket or the delicatessen, you really want to look for one that's unpasteurized, because
That's it. Unpasteurized. So it either says unpasteurized or live.
Yeah.
And it's in the fridge always. So
Okay.
kimchi works just as well as sauerkraut, whatever people prefer. Kimchi,
Yes, yeah. Kimchi's a little spicy,
chili.
and yeah.
It's spicy, but I love that sometimes. I've
Yeah.
got both in my fridge all the time. And yes, sure, I do run fermented food masterclasses or workshops and teach people how to make it, because of course it's much, much cheaper that way. So what it's doing is they are providing to your gut as you eat them, they are providing extra microbes that work synergistically with your own gut microbiome, and they help aid digestion. They help enhance your own gut microbiome. Interestingly enough, they don't colonize your gut. They're transient, what's called transient. But what they do is they're anti-inflammatory. So they get down there into your gut. They stay live through the digestive system, and they get down there into your large intestine, and they meet up with your own gut microbiome, who say, "Hi, buddy. Hi, five. How are you going? Love you. Thanks for joining in." They make them happy. They help produce those anti-inflammatory byproducts that your own beneficial gut microbiome are also producing. You provide them with gentle fiber through a plant-based diet. And they also help assist with digestion and reduce bloating. So a tablespoon of sauerkraut or kimchi a day, great. A natural live, unsweetened yogurt or kefir, have, like, say, half a cup or a whole cup every day, fantastic. Then there are some of those live drinks, like live apple cider vinegar or the kombuchas or the water kefirs. As long as, if you're buying it, it says live or contains the mother, and it's in the fridge, that's great. As long as it's low in sugar, which is 5 grams of sugar per 100 mils of drink or less, fantastic. And so all of those, they work beautifully in the gut. They're really, really good, and they help reduce that gut bloating. They help to enhance your own beneficial gut microbiome.
Yeah.
It's great. And the beneficial knock-on effects are this anti-inflammatory effects around the body. And we know now, through actually a lot of research from Deakin University's Food and Mood Center, and Deakin University have studied a lot food and mood, and inflammatory Western style diets with lots of ultra processed food versus a Mediterranean focused diet, not even a full Mediterranean diet, but a modified Mediterranean diet. And they've proven in research now that less ultra processed food, that more Mediterranean focused way of eating, an anti-inflammatory diet, helps our mood. People with mild depression got less depressive results after eating that for 4 weeks. It was just like mind-boggling. It was there, black and white. And they're going on to produce some fantastic results, and very, very doable, very easy transition, even for people with lacking in energy and feeling depressed. Very doable to swap over. So that's fantastic. And this is what we want, because remember, our mind and our mood, so vital in that perimenopause and menopause time, because we can become anxious and we're low in mood or flatlining, neither jolly nor feeling low. That flatlining, I think, is the worst, where you just have no highs and lows. It's just lack of joy. That's a menopause symptom. And so it's so important. It's so important, and the gut affects it.
And I always think that, if someone's listening to that, I think, right, yay, I'm going to add more vegetables, and I'm going to, fermented foods, and, my gut's going to have this amazing party, and it's all going to be positive. But, if you're not careful and you overdo it,
Yes,
You know,
slowly.
I've been very enthusiastic with clients at the beginning of my practice, and you eat loads of this, and they come back like, oh my God, I'm so bloated. So it is important, isn't it? Like you said, to start with a teaspoon and
Yes,
build up and let your gut
yes,
and your gut bugs adjust to the sort of, new normal.
absolutely. That's exactly
But
right.
it sounds
That's it.
amazing. Thank you for that, Emma. And if you're listening, you'll know, from I'm smiling here from ear to ear because Emma is just so enthusiastic and it's making me want to eat more sauerkraut, more
Yeah,
vegetables and kimchi and kefir and all of that. Brilliant. So we've
yeah.
said that vegetables, fermented foods, anything else that we can do for someone who's suffering with, gut issues at the moment?
So go easy on the fiber initially, especially the what's called insoluble fiber. That's the fiber you can see. So a classic example would be things like all bran or oat bran or something like that. That possibly maybe could make you more constipated or more bloated or give you loose bowel movements. So you want to be very careful with the high fiber foods initially. The soluble fibers are better initially anyway, which are those gel-like fibers or the mucilaginous fibers. So they are things like, how when you cook up oats and you make porridge, that's gloopy. Well,
Yeah.
actually, it does have some insoluble fiber in, but it also has that gloopy soluble fiber. That's great. Like if you had flax seeds or chia seeds and you mix them with some sort of a liquid or yogurt, they get this like gel-like kind of fiber on the outside of them.
Yes, yeah.
And that's the soluble fiber, and that's terrific. And it's things like that. So it's actually soluble fibers in nuts and seeds and legumes, pulses, beans, but you want to go slightly easy on the insoluble fiber. That's not too much legumes, pulses, beans initially, and not too much grainy fibers. You want to really keep them to a minimum. Plant food generally is okay. That's really good. Sorry, I'm so sorry. A vegetable food is usually okay. Some fruit's good as long as you're not having too much of it in to replace other foods. That's great. So that's all. Just be a little bit careful on going too hard on the fibers initially, but you
Yeah.
can layer it up as you gradually start to feel a bit better. It's great.
Got a lovely, is it a 1 week reset, which I
When we reset,
bought myself
that's
last night and had a look at it, and it's beautiful. So if you're wanting a sort of reset, you can go onto Emma's website and download this document with lots of gorgeous recipes. If you just want, a help to, some help to change, and there's, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's really lovely. I noticed there wasn't that much protein in some of the meals.
no, no, and it's not, and it's definitely only for 1 week. And it
Okay.
is low in protein. It's got
Yeah.
less protein than I want people to have. So I actually say at the end, right now you would double your protein intake, and this is how you might do
Okay.
it if
Yeah.
you want to continue on the benefits. So you're right. And I did that on purpose because sometimes I have clients I see in my clinic, and sometimes they're doing what's called high protein diet, or sometimes called a ketone diet, and they come and they almost crawl into the meeting because they start off doing a high protein diet and they cut out all carbs, and they have vegetables and they have lots of protein, lots of fish and meat and chicken and things like that, and maybe sort of high protein cheeses and things like that, and some vegetables, and they do quite well, and they might be doing it for weight loss, and they go, oh my God, this is so fantastic. And they do it for a bit, and then it kind of maybe stalls, and so they think, oh, I better have a bit more protein and be a bit, and they have more protein, and so they are becoming quite toxic because they're having way too much protein. Because yes, we need more protein in midlife, but there's a limit, and that limit then actually upsets our balance of our gut microbiome, produces way too much beta-glucuronidase, which actually means that our estrogen gets absolutely out of whack, and we get toxic with recirculating bad estrogen. We get toxic because our kidneys are working too hard. Our liver says, oh my God, what's going on? Because it has to process all this extra protein. And often we can become quite toxic, quite tired. In fact, our menopause symptoms can increase. So I've got people like that. So I wanted to wash out this whole concept of overdoing any type of food.
Nutrient, yeah.
So some people have almost actually too much dairy. I love dairy foods. I'm a really big fan of them. Fantastic protein source sometimes, but a great calcium source if it suits you. I've got nothing against meat sometimes, occasionally, but I don't like how it upsets the gut estrobiome. So you have to be careful. So this is what I do, but it does have some protein. I'm trying to shift people into a bit more.
I think that's really good advice, Emma. I think the whole protein in this area of midlife and menopause has got ridiculous. And you know, I've even done a post on, you know, you need to eat more protein, because I do see some women that have no protein and then they're very tired and washed out.
Yes,
but then
exactly.
some women have got the message too loudly and they're eating, you know, maybe 40 grams of protein with very little vegetables, a piece of bread, and then you know, just feeling healthy, and then doing the same again at dinner. And you know, maybe they don't have the digestive capacity to you know, to even digest it. Whereas if you're having some legumes, which, you know, chickpeas, beans, lentils, they've got some protein, and you're having a little bit of fish with that, you don't need 30 grams of the fish, because you're also getting, you know, protein from the berries, and you kind of get from the beans rather. But you know, you kind of work it out yourself, and you work out what's comfortable for you. But you know, 30 grams of protein every meal for every woman who's got a different lifestyle isn't appropriate. And like you said, it's not everybody can afford one-to-one consultation, but we are all individuals, aren't we? So it's really, I'm the same as you, advocating that people should listen to their body and, you know, adjust their diet accordingly. Yeah,
I completely agree, because I agree, often they're too low in protein. So this is just a 1-week reset to try and get rid of eating habits. I'm thinking of someone, we're coming back to what you mentioned earlier, someone who might have a wheat-based cereal for breakfast and a sandwich for lunch, and then some pasta or something, or a pie for dinner. That's wheat. And they're tired, and they're just, you know, and they've got menopause symptoms going on. And also it does help with that fat loss around the abdomen as well. It's just shifting mindsets for a week, and then they can go on from there. Absolutely, protein is critical, though. You're right. And layering up your protein from different sources, the nuts and the seeds, the legumes, pulses, beans, that firm tofu, so high in protein, perhaps some seafood or some egg, perhaps some dairy, you know, absolutely amazing. So it's that's what I do.
It's a really lovely ebook. And as I said, I got it, last night, and had a look through it, and it's so inspirational, and all the recipes look absolutely amazing. So I can really recommend that if you feel yourself you need a week's reset or some new recipes. Before we move on from sort of general gut health, you mentioned earlier, you know, you talked about timing. That's also important for the gut. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Emma, for us?
That's right. So we also now know, and through research, which is great, that the gut needs a period of time. Our gut digestive system and our gut microbiome needs a period of time to rest and repair. And so the thinking now is that the minimum is 12 hours from any digestion. The better is 14 hours. And so we've got a kind of a habit that some people get into, and this is partly why this reset also came about, is that someone eats an evening meal, and then they might rest in the evening, and they might sit in front of the TV, and they'll snack on something or other, and maybe they might have a cup of tea and a little something, and they might finish that snack about 9 o'clock in the evening. And then in the morning, they might be rushing out to work. Perhaps they've got kids to get to school, that sort of thing. And they feel like, oh, I better get something into my body. So maybe at 7 a.m. they're having a little bit of breakfast or something, because I think it's probably the best thing for them to do. Well, that's only 10 hours of resting our gut and our digestive system from 9 until 7. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's the right maths. And so that's not enough to help our body heal up. And it's quite inflammatory all over the body, not just in the gut, if we don't give ourselves minimum that 12 hours rest time. Best seems to be 14 hours. And partly it was Zoe that did that study on the 14-hour fasting stage, and they found that people overall felt better, and especially they even narrowed it down to even some women in menopause felt better, and that sort of thing. So this is really good. And that just means if someone's having their evening meal maybe about 7, they might not start eating or digesting anything until, say, 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, this varies with everybody and their lifestyle. If they can have their evening meal even earlier, that's better. But if they can't, that's fine. Also, they best not start eating, preferably for roughly 14 hours. Now, if someone has poor blood glucose management or something, or feels really faint without food, they need to have a little bit of food. It's very individual. But overall, that's my suggestion. And people can fast for longer if they want to help with their abdominal fat that they'd like to lose. Sometimes that works really well, like a 16-hour fast, and then eating within an 8-hour window. And fasting means nothing that a body can digest. So that's, if a person drinks tea or coffee, that's black tea and black coffee, or herbal teas or water. Any of those in the fasting stage is fine, but not usually anything with, say, milk in it or anything like that.
That was
and
really
it does
good
seem to
for
help.
the body and really good for the gut bacteria. Quite like that break as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
Although I
Absolutely.
don't know if you've done any research, Emma, on the following, but if I've read a little around this, but if you leave the gut with no food for a very long time, and I'm not sure what the cutoff is, whether it's 14, 18 hours, but because some people even advocate doing a 1 day fast or a 3-day water fast, but that the gut bugs can actually start eating the wall, the sort of lining of the gut, which can be quite problematic. Have you done any research into that? So
I have not done
yeah,
into
if the gut bugs, basically they've got nothing to eat because you're not feeding them any lovely fiber. They will start eating that sort of mucus, mucus sort of membrane or lining of the digestive tract. Yeah.
Okay, so I think there's a balance here. So they're actually meant to, a little bit, like that's part of that cleaning out process,
Okay.
is actually eating a little bit, or eating up any dead cells that are knocking around there and cleaning up that lining of the gut. That is part of that fasting period. But you're right, there are some scientists who are not keen on the fasting. So there's a lot of mixed evidence out there. So on the one hand, you've got people like Dr. Peter Attia, whose book, it's Outlive. I knew there was live in the.
Yeah.
It's an amazing longevity book. It's really sound. It's not wacky. It's based on evidence and research. He's great. So he's not much a fan of fasting, but he doesn't mean that means you eat constantly right up until late in the evening. He means the long fasts, like the 16 hours. But absolutely, the minimum 12 hours, everyone knows that that's great for the gut to repair and heal. But beyond that, some people think it's not quite so good. Others think it's fabulous. Like, golly, no, Dr. Satya Panda, is it? Dr. Satya Panda,
yes, yeah.
is absolutely big on the long fast. And he has also research to say that it's great for humans. So I don't know where.
I also think, though, there's a difference between men and women.
Yeah.
My husband, he can go all day, not eat anything, and come home for dinner. And, he's at work, he's in meetings, he's sort of, on it all day. If I get to a certain stage where if I don't eat, my blood sugar goes too low. And I if you've ever worn a continued glucose monitor, you know your rhythms. But when mine goes so low, gets down to like, below 4, then I start having a bit of brain fog and it's not good. And even when I eat, maybe half an hour later, it takes a long time for my system to get back onto an even kill. And yeah, so for me, I'm a sort of 2 meals a day or 3 meals a day person. I don't really want to miss breakfast and lunch or have those longer fasts, because it just makes me feel I can't work like that. My body likes stability, and it likes 3 meals a day. And I'm quite an active person. I'm walking the dog, I do a couple of classes a week. I do stretches every morning. So it doesn't suit me. And I'm also quite slim, so I probably don't have a lot of body fat to burn as energy. But there are other people that do really well on fasting. But I do sometimes feel with women, you do need a more nuanced approach. And I think sometimes when men say, do this, do that, they've got this quite stable level of testosterone, whereas women, especially in perimenopause, obviously our estrogen's up and down, and our progesterone is kind of tailing off. It can, you're putting in another thing if you're expecting your body then to deal with
another stressor. Absolutely correct. Absolutely. I think that's exactly right. And I think it's very up to the individual. You're right. And especially if they're still menstruating, as in having periods, then running up that week, 10 days running up to the period is not a good time to be fasting, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're right about that. I tend to wait till I'm hungry in the morning. And that depends on what I ate the night before or even the day before. And then I eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that might be 8 a.m. or it might be 10 a.m. It depends. And I eat 3 meals a day because I want to get 30 grams into each meal because I like to have 90
30
grams
grams of protein, you mean?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
tend to go, I mean, you may have a different ratio, but I tend to work on roughly 1.2 grams of protein per kilo of body weight.
Yes, yeah.
Now that I like that, I think that gives a woman, but then sometimes that with some women that works out at 60 or 70 grams of protein a day. And I think I quite like her to have nudging up a little bit, even perhaps. I know Peter Attia in his longevity book, Outlive, thinks we should be working on 1.6 grams protein per kilo of body weight.
Does he differentiate between men and women?
He doesn't differentiate.
No,
He says 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight.
Because again, men have higher muscle mass, don't they, than women?
Well, they do, but this is about per kilo of body weight. So it's fairly accurate. It's really good.
Okay.
So I do trend to go up higher on the protein. And just all those sources, the nuts, the seeds, the whole grains, there's 8 grams of protein per 100 grams in oats. So there's some protein in some grains,
isn't it?
Yep. And then there's eggs and there's dairy, and obviously the harder, so to speak, the dairy, or the thicker the dairy, the higher the protein. And then we've got, oh my gosh, tofu. I'm just obsessed with it. The firm tofu has almost as much protein in it as like a piece of salmon or fish.
And it also has levels of calcium, doesn't it, tofu?
Unloaded in calcium and loaded with phytoestrogens,
which are important.
Whether a person is on HRT or not, the phytoestrogen still works synergistically with HRT. It's really good. Really important. So because our gut microbes, going back to the estrobolome, our gut microbes actually affect how much estrogen is floating around our body.
Can you just quickly, and I'm looking at my watch, and it's brilliant talking to you, Emma, but we've already been talking quite a long time, which is amazing, and it's all fantastic advice. But can you just tell people what the estrobolome is quickly? So they know.
It's terminology for how our gut microbiome affects our estrogen balance.
Brilliant definition.
It's just the terminology for it.
Yes.
So estro being estrogen, and bolome meaning kind of like a microbial place or thing in our body. But in this, when we talk about estrobolome, it's about the gut microbiome. And the thing we found out recently as well, my gosh, there's so much that science is just and we really don't know about this actually, but we found out how the gut microbes, or some of them, the estrobolome gut microbes in our bodies, process estrogen or assist the processing of estrogen in our body. So our body produces estrogen. Even once we're in menopause, we still produce estrogen in our brains and slightly in our ovaries, but also in our adrenals. So there's a little bit knocking around. And then we might actually have HRT as well on top. But we do produce some, but prior to menopause, we're producing plenty. And in perimenopause, sometimes we're producing way too much estrogen, and sometimes we're producing too little, and it's all a bit out of whack. And our gut microbes are involved in the processing of this, not creating the estrogen, but processing it. Because when we produce estrogen in our body, we produce a very active estrogen, and that does a good job around the body, locks onto estrogen receptors, and it's fantastic. But we actually don't want it circulating around our body for long. We want it to do its job and then be deconjugated out. Oh, hang on. No, conjugated out. The terminology.
Broken down, don't we, into sort of safer metabolites, so the body can get rid of it.
Yes. Turns out our gut microbes, the estrobolome ones, actually help with that, detoxify it away. So if it was still floating around for too long, we'd get actually menopause symptoms, funny enough. We get headaches, we feel groggy,
Yes.
we feel tired,
Yeah.
we'd have disturbed sleep, we'd have poor skin. That's actually too much estrogen still floating around, that really active one. And that, of course, the liver is involved very much in this as well. But so are our gut microbes. It's fantastic. It's really, really good.
Yeah. So a lot of focus on, your advice, a lot of focus on getting those lovely, natural, fresh foods in your diet is going to help, your gut, and it's also going to help your hormones and your hormone balance.
Hormone balance and our bone health. Remember, the gut microbes affect our bone mineral building and our help to stop the minerals being sucked from our bones. Our gut microbes actually help with that. There's this bone gut access that they also only just realized about, and how much the gut microbes are involved in bone mineralization, keeping the bone strong.
Yeah. So it's a great place to start, isn't it, for anybody to, who wants to improve their health, wants to feel better, to really start focusing on what they can do and using your brilliant advice here today. Just want to say to the listeners that, Emma has I think 4 books on your website. One of them is called the Low Histamine Cookbook. So if any of you are listening, and I was hoping to go into this in a bit deeper, but I don't think we've got time now, but there's that cookbook. If you feel like you're, histamine intolerant, which can be like, hives, itching, diarrhea, runny nose, headaches, that might be worth looking at as well. And I've seen a lot of women in my clinic that have a histamine intolerance, and there's not that much help out there. So I think that book is amazing for that. But just to sort of finish off today, I always ask, whoever I'm talking to, this podcast is how to feel like a midlife goddess. And I think Emma, looking at her, she's a vibrant, colourful character, lots of enthusiasm, and you strike me as someone who does feel really good. What could you share with someone who's listening about, what you've learned from your own menopause, midlife journey that you can pass on to other women that you think might help them?
Okay, absolutely. So I think when you're making changes, you start with one meal only. And I think it's always great with your first meal of the day. It's great to have a really good deep dive at it and look at it and work out, well, what's in that, on that plate or in that bowl, because you're breaking your fast. That meal is nourishing you, but it's also nourishing your gut microbiome after that overnight fast. And it's really quite important. I'd love it if it had some fermented food in it. I'd love it if it had some gentle fiber in it and plenty of protein, and also some naturally high in vitamins and minerals. Now, you can go in 2 different directions here. It's really important. You can have that kind of like, if you're fermented food, it could be a yogurt or a kefir. You could have some nuts and seeds. You can have some dark berries. You can have some cinnamon in there, or fresh grated ginger, that sort of thing. Cocoa nibs, all great for your gut microbiome. And perhaps a few oats if you want extra energy, but you have to be careful of too many oats, because sometimes they can produce a kind of a bit of a sort of a slump mid-morning. That's great. Or you can have kind of like that kind of more egg-based breakfast. I love an omelette with loads of fresh herbs. I put some lentils into the omelette. I might put grate in some hard cheese, that sort of thing. Definitely 2 great breakfasts. And then I put a dollop of sauerkraut with that omelette. So really good. But start with that one. Start with that.
So really my question was, that's brilliant advice and very practical. And would you say that's what gives you energy? It's just, you've obviously got lots of purpose in helping other women, which I think is really important in midlife, isn't it? And you practice what you preach.
Yeah.
So is that what you would say to women? Like really just, invest in your diet, invest time in having a decent breakfast, a decent lunch, getting lots of colourful, vegetables into your diet. Is that what you would say is your recipe for feeling as good as you do?
Absolutely. So it's fermented food. It's following a plant-focused diet with Mediterranean style, having extra virgin olive oil for everything. Literally, that's the only oil I use.
It's just fantastic.
Absolutely. Amazing. Absolutely. I eat a handful of nuts and seeds every day. And that's what makes me feel fantastic. And I definitely feel fantastic. I sleep well. I jump out of bed in the morning. I have energy throughout the day. I don't get an afternoon slump. I mean, it's
fantastic. That's what we all want. Before we sign off, one thing I haven't mentioned, and Emma has recently brought out a new supplement sort of blend called, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Herorite? Okay.
Hera is the goddess for
Yes.
women, or one of the
Herorite.
goddesses for women. Yeah.
Yeah.
I brought it out because I was so frustrated with the number of supplements women were taking. And I just wanted to simplify their lives. So I brought out this one supplement drink, this daily drink you can have. And it's so much more than just a greens drink. It has got some greens in it, but it's got lots of minerals, magnesium, some zinc in it as well, and lots of plant extracts. And I think it's quite clever because it's got soluble fiber in it as well. So it kind of covers for me all bases. And it helps with that daily kind of nutrient, energy, mood, gut health, everything, skin, hair, nails, that sort of thing. And we popped so it's quite, if it wasn't, we popped a little bit of a sweetener in, a little bit of flavoring. You can go down 2 routes. It's so fascinating formulating up your own supplement.
Sure.
It's the first time I've ever done it. You can go with natural sweetener because all these things, they taste bitter. Magnesium is bitter tasting if you ate it on its own. So is zinc, so is dandelion root, which is in the drink. And if I had a bitter tasting drink, people wouldn't take it. So you've got to sweeten it up. You go down one direction, which is the dried concentrated fruit, which I don't like at all, but some supplements do dried concentrated strawberries or some sort of fruit, and they say it doesn't contain a sweetener because they've actually put sugar dried concentrated fruits in.
Yeah.
No way was I doing that. So we put a natural sweetener in, and we've used one that's brand new to the market. The thing is, it's a little bit sweet, we've worked out, because it's masking the flavor of the bitter minerals. And it's called formatin. It's just made from the Camte fruit, and it's like monk fruit extract. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And probably it's a little bit sweet for most people's taste. I think I'd probably add more water or milk when I'm taking it now. And we may even modify that with the next manufacturer and make it less sweet. But it's just great. It's fantastic.
It's a really lovely supplement to have alongside.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's absolutely. And we also, what's more is, it's what we didn't put in. We didn't just ticking the box. We didn't put in any herbs because that's contraindicated with HRT. We didn't put in, possibly not ashwagandha, but other ones are. And I've read the research and it's contraindicated despite what, no way.
What are you talking about, ashwagandha?
No, ashwagandha is okay.
Yeah.
Other herbs aren't, like red clover and maca and not rhodiola, black cohosh.
Yeah.
Fine if you're not on HRT. I would not go near it if I was on HRT.
Really?
Pardon?
What? Yeah. So why wouldn't you go red clover? What does it do if you're taking HRT?
It's just contraindicated. They're suggesting, the recommendation is that you don't take it.
Okay.
It's the same with breast cancer. You just have to be careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that some people say, no, it's absolutely fine. And we've looked at the research. I'm just using my personal view on the research I've read. Yeah. I wouldn't go with herbs.
Okay.
And also, I'm not a herbalist. I'm not qualified.
No,
and that was banged into me when I did my degree. If you're not a herbalist, if you don't study it, you don't prescribe it.
Yes. Yeah.
That was what they said. And I thought, right, absolutely. Okay, so, or a naturopath for that matter, who learn all about those things. So we didn't put the herbs in on purpose, and we didn't put in. So it's what you don't put in, and we didn't put mushroom extract in just to tick a box. Sure, people can take herbs as an extra or mushroom if they think it beneficially affects them.
Yeah.
It was
it's a really nice,
important.
simple greens with some dandelion, some magnesium, some zinc.
And the plant extracts like turmeric.
I will also put a link in
ginger
if anyone wants to check it out.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for your time, and it's been quite a lot of time, but Emma has given us, some brilliant advice there. Hopefully got you thinking about what you eat, and some amazing practical advice for your everyday and making these changes gradually. And she shared what she eats and how she feels so well. So thank you for joining us, Emma.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure, Amanda. Thanks.
If you'd like to find out more about my approach, you can find me and lots of my simple, nutritious recipes demonstrated on Instagram at Amanda Ryder Nutrition, and that's Ryder with a Y. Or you can visit my website, www.amandaryder.co.uk. Or if you like a copy of my book, Feel Good for Menopause, you can find that on Amazon. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could like, follow, or click the subscribe button. It will really help me grow the podcast and keep me going. So thank you. And of course, do get in touch. I'd always love to hear from you. So that leaves me to say I'm sending lots of love and light from my midlife goddess to yours. See you next week. Bye for now.